Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping in. This week's video is going to be a cherry bowl. It is almost 10 inches on the long side and 9.5 going across the grain. Wood typically shrinks more on the edge grain than it does end to end, so it is going to be oval. This blank was roughed in on a metal lathe, and you can see the chucks marks where it was done on the metal lathe. Much easier to rough in that way. I didn't rough it in, I bought it dried. I have hundreds of these actually, and we're going to mount it on a faceplate with a sacrificial block using hot melt glue. And if the base was a little thicker, I would turn a mortise in the bottom of this and mount it on my 4-jaw chuck. But this is an alternative way to do it. It works well, and for people that don't have 4-jaw chucks, everybody's got a faceplate and you can do it this way. So I found the center, and I've drawn a circle with the right diameter to match this little faceplate block. So I put a shot of glue on there, and then you push it right in hard before it gets a chance to dry at all. And you center it up in your circles. And then for some insurance, I go all the way around the entire blank. Let it run right down the piece of wood onto the blank. You want to make sure your glue gun is really good and hot before you start this. We'll give that a couple of minutes to set up and put it on the lathe. So now we're ready to mount this on the lathe, and the faceplate of course is threaded, the spindle on the lathe is threaded, so it just turns on. It has a lock on it on the spindle. You tighten it up. You can see that's running a little bit out of true where it's not perfectly round to start with. So the first order of business is to get it back into round. Start by truing the lip of the bowl up with the bowl gouge. We'll take it the least amount off we can to make sure that it's true without making the bowl any smaller. Perfect. So now I'm just going to make a pass on the inside and true it up. Or a couple passes, whatever it takes. So we're back around on the inside now, that's all balanced. Just start on the outside. You always want to check this before you turn it on, just in case. So we got a little piece right here left to true up. The other side also needs a little off it. So when you turn with hot melt glue, you have to be a lot less aggressive than you are if you had that in a 4-jaw chuck, because that glue can come apart And there is a barrier of glue between the two pieces of wood, and it does allow a tiny bit of vibration. It's not bad, but it's certainly not as steady as if it was in a chuck. That's pretty close to it, I think. And once you get a little vibration, and you probably can't see it, but it'll just follow itself right down through. I'm going to take a freshly sharpened scraper and just clean up a few of these little lines right here. Work from the bottom to the top this time. Okay, so that's a nice clean cut. I like the way that all transitioned. So the outside is ready to sand. So I'm going to start on this with about 120 or 150 grit, probably 150, see how it works out. And if that's not coarse enough, I'll jump up to 100, but I think I can start with 150. I always start with the first sanding coat going in reverse, so the fibers when I was turning them have a tendency to want to go away from the chisel. So now I'm going to turn it the other way around. It'll stand them back up and they'll cut quicker. We'll slow down to about 300 RPM. For sanding. And once you take that first initial little sanding, you can see what you've got for tool lines and what you've got for tear out, and it's not too bad. The reason that I'm finishing the outside before I finish turning the inside is because sometimes when the tension comes out of the wood, it'll warp a little bit and you will not get a nice smooth surface there. So I'll get the outside finished and then the inside will be true as I turn it. Now I'll bring you back when I'm going to start turning out the inside. So just gone through all the grits from 100 up to 320, and at 320 I like to start out and try some Yorkshire grit. Just an abrasive paste. You put it on while the lathe's turning and buff it in until it stops coming off on your towel. Okay, so there's nothing coming off on the towel now, so that one's finished. And that is the regular Yorkshire grit. Now we're going to go to the microfine. And this gives you about the equivalent of 1,000 grit finish when you're done with this, which is super for a bowl like this. This just goes on the same way as the Yorkshire grit almost. A little higher speed so it melts in better. So you just get a good base coat on it and give it a minute to dry up and then buff it in. So there's the outside finished. Now I'm going to move you around so you can watch the hollowing out on the inside. So you hear the vibration. You wouldn't get that on a 4-jaw chuck, but with hot melt glue in a bowl this size, it does somewhat. It sounds a lot worse than it actually is, but be very cautious on the entrance cut. So what I'm doing is I'm going to get this edge wall to the thickness that I want, while there's still lots of meat in the bottom to keep the bowl as stable as it can be on this outside edge. If you thin it down all the way start to finish, what'll happen sometimes is the tension comes out of the wood or whatever, the wood will move or can move and it'll get oblong on you and then you get into a mess out here. So I like to leave the base down and get this piece done first. Now this is just a utility bowl, so it's not going to be razor thin or anything like that. I have nothing to prove on wall thickness here. So that is very close to what I want for a finished wall. it's actually a decent finish. So while it is all running nice and true, I'm going to put the little radius on this lip of the bowl. Use an easy wood carbide tool for that. Not that it's necessary, but I have it. It's nice and sharp. Make sure that the edge is nice and clean, which it is, all the way around. Now we'll go back inside and start taking out that bottom. So I cleaned that little piece off the bottom so I can just see what I've got here. So I got an inch of material, just under an inch of material on the bottom, but I do have to turn a recess on the base, and that recess on the base is probably going to take about 3/8 of an inch off it. Just clean this cut up a little bit right here, take some of them tool marks out. A nice sharp scraper. Very gently. Don't like the sound of that, so I'm going to switch over to something a little smaller here. Put a tool mark right here, and I'm just going to put a little oil on that and sharpen up my scraper. It's just mineral oil. By no means perfect, because this piece seems to be getting a lot of vibration in, but we'll start out with some 100 grit paper and we'll shine her up. I think it'll be just fine. So I'll start on that, come back when I'm finished. Alright, so we got this sanded down now, down to 500 grit. So I'm going to start back in with the Yorkshire grit again. So while doing this, I know I have a couple of subscribers who are new to wood turning that are anxious to get at it, and that noise, that vibration noise that you heard, which I'm going to leave in the video, just prior to me starting to sand, is the sound of what wood sounds like right before you're going to get a catch. So when you start to get vibration like that, you're best to change tools, change your speed, make sure that your tool rest is up tight to your wood. Anything that may be causing that vibration. I know what's causing the vibration. It's just a pretty open grain piece of cherry, and it's held on with hot melt glue, which is prone to vibrating. 4-jaw chuck, back in the good old days, pretty well everything was turned on a faceplate with a sacrificial block of wood, or wood glue and paper between your piece and the wood. Some people put screws in them and then sanded them off and put felt on. I never resorted to that, but whatever works for you. But if you can't afford a 4-jaw chuck, you can still do the same work as if you did have one, but you may end up doing more with the sandpaper, which I had to on this one, admittedly, than you would normally do if you were on a 4-jaw chuck. And if your skill with the chisels aren't quite up to snuff, better to put an extra half an hour into sanding and have a finished product that you can show or have or give away or do what you're going to do with it, than have pieces on the floor and a lump on your head. Something that you'll learn when you get going in this deal is when you first start out, everybody's looking at how thick the walls are in the bowl and all kinds of different things. And as long as it looks good to you, better, like I say, better to have a finished piece with a 3/8 thick wall than to have an 1/8 wall laying in shards on your floor. It's not a contest. Nobody has anything to prove to anyone but themselves. Hardest thing to find in your shop is the flat screwdriver that you use to take the cover off your hamster machine. And I don't know why that is, but it is, at least in my shop. So you go a little faster on the hamster machine so it'll butt in. Okay, I'm going to move you around so you can see the hot melt getting taken off and how that works, and then we'll turn it around and do the bottom. Okay, so very carefully with a pointed tool, I'm just going to cut into the hot melt glue. This is a chisel that I have ground specifically for making the dovetails on my 4-jaw chuck when I'm doing bottoms. So very, very carefully. You don't want anything but glue here. So you recall that we put some glue in the center, so it does have a hole in the center. You do not want to catch this chisel right now. Now, a little more yet. Okay, so if this were a piece of maple or birch or something, I would orient the grain so that it was going up and down. So you can see the growth rings are here. If the tree was this way, the grain is now running up and down. And I would take that off with a chisel. But cherry is a little more open grain and a little softer wood. And you can ask me how I know that. And what'll happen oftentimes is that as you're taking it off, it'll crack the bottom of your bowl. So we're gonna do something different, which requires me to clean up some shavings. So that's why I need to clean up some shavings. Just slide that in between the bowl and the faceplate. Let it work its way through. Don't rush it. It'll melt on its own. Don't get overly anxious and try to break it off and have a good hold on it, because when it goes quickly, as you can see. So this kind of seems out of order, but when I take a bowl off of this, I typically clean it up so it's ready for the next time. I just face the glue off with a scraper. And what you want to be careful of, or make sure of, is that the face is just very slightly concave. Go like that. You don't want it sitting on hump in the middle. And if you're turning bigger bowls, and I actually should have had a bigger one, I have a bigger faceplate here, bigger diameter, although it gives you a bigger bottom to work with after the fact, does give you more stability. And this is just purely to give me room at the bottom. It doesn't need to be this long, although the screws are probably up to about here. It could be shorter, and that makes a little less vibration as well, but I like to have the room to get into the bottom. So this is a set of coal jaws for anyone that doesn't know, and it's made to turn a bowl upside down on, and these little rubber pegs, as you tighten the 4-jaw chuck that these are mounted to, it closes up and it'll grab your bowl, and it'll only work with certain bowl lips. if this is pretty straight up and down, and so it's not going to squeeze it out. It's actually tapered in a little bit. So this is a good bowl to use for this. This is actually about as big a bowl as you can use on this particular set. I've got it out as far as I would care to run it, and you do run it max on 600 RPM. I never turn it up that fast. So you just hold it in tight to the face and tighten these up, and you just kind of watch the, you can watch the indentation into the rubber pegs to make sure that you're okay. Give it a little test before you turn it on. Now, I've taken the point center out of my tailstock. I'm just going to slide that up just to hold it until I get almost finished. And again, you don't need to put a lot of pressure, just enough that it can't go anywhere. I'm going to change tool rests here. Just a little 1/4 inch roll gouge with a bit of a swept back grind. Clean this cut up right here. Very light. Once you get a ledge established with this, you push in so the bevel's in and holds the bowl onto the chuck. So once we are sure, we got all kinds of contour there, so nothing's going to touch. I'm just going to round this and shape it down a little bit. Okay, I got this all sanded up here now. Just ready to put Yorkshire grit on it, but I am going to put a few little rings, just a little detail on the bottom. You can see how really open or how wide the grain is in this one, just because of where it was cut out of the log. And usually pieces like that do tend to vibrate a little more. Nice thing about them is that they finish up real easily. Okay, we'll give it a little shot of Hampshire sheen and we're all finished up here. Important, I think, to do the same finish on the bottom as you do on all the rest of it, not to, just because it's a bottom, not to let it go. Okay, take this off. When we are finished, I'll put some stills up at the end of the video for anyone's interested in watching them. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. And like or dislike. If you didn't like what you see, please leave a comment so that I can improve if there's something you'd like to see different. Thanks for watching. See you next time.